I think we'll give it 5 more minutes, if you don't mind. Given all our logistic issues, I think 5 minutes is decent to wait. Then we can start.
Hassan, can you please confirm right now, do you see my slide in full screen
Yes,
or do you
very
see
much
the
so.
presenter
Sí,
mode?
sí, todo bien, sí.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I think because you're not presenting, it is showing not occupying the full screen. But I think since when you do start, I think you would be able to put it presenter mode, but it takes up 2/3 of the screen already.
Oh, okay. Then you're not seeing it in full screen right now.
Yeah, because I see
Let me check.
participants at this moment. So, pruébalo.
Luis, it is just
So,
because of the
Sí.
it's just because of the other Zoom display settings where you are actually in full screen mode. So it's just showing.
okay. I see.
We see some additional information, but you are in full screen mode.
Oh, okay. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
In 2 minutes or so, we'll start.
Perfect. Yep.
Yeah, I think we would have to start and then just the introduction, which will take a bit of time so more people can come in. My name is Hassan Logart. I work with the CSO's Tailings Working Group. And for a long time, when I worked at Benchmarks and elsewhere, since the Jagersfontein disaster, I think now entering its 4th year, we called for the release of a report. And the report that we'll be discussing today, it's a technical report. So I've been asked by the 2 professors to be very clear. While they acknowledge there are other environmental and social issues around the report that society must take forward, this report is largely a technical report. So we are honored that the lead professor, Jacobs, is present with us. He's got a lot of titles behind his name where he studied, but he is for decades, he's been the geotechnical and structural engineering expert, and he brought this to the table. Professor Luis Torres Cruz, he's an assistant professor at the Tailings Management Institute, Tailings Management and Innovation. He's based currently in Canada and he's back home visiting us here. He's an authority, international authority on the stability and innovative management of mining waste. Professor Jacobs is at Pretoria University. They were tasked with some of their colleagues, and they'll tell us who they were, to do this kind of study. And when the study came out, the Free State government and others were celebrating it. It came out, and then I just want to quote what the Free State government said, or the deputy minister said. The first signs of instability of the wall took place some 3.5 years before the failure. So there's a number of these kind of facts that are in the public domain. Even in the recommendations, Professor Jacobs and Torres Cruz basically touch on some of these issues about where there's opportunities for us to learn. It is not their intention, nor is it ours, to cast blame on anyone in this seminar. We can do it outside. But here we're trying to look at how they've done the study, and it's part of our own growth, a tailings literacy growth. They make about 10 recommendations, right? And that is worth exploring. So Professor Torres Cruz will start, and then he'll be followed by Professor Jacobs, and then we will open up for some questions. But they've also advised that those, because they acknowledge that they are technical people, so some of a lot of what they'll be saying will be over our heads, but bear with us. And if there are some questions that you don't understand, some of the phrases that they're using, please, let's challenge each other. You are free to ask, but note full well, we've only got an hour and 20 minutes. So we need to get through the presentations as well, but you can't let misunderstandings roll over. So if you don't understand some of these points, please, the professors are very willing to kind of engage as we stand there, as long as we don't get derailed about where we are. For both professors, these are communities that live, these are activists, mining activists. And I said, the last time I looked, I didn't see whether they've attended. One of the Human Rights Commission's commissioners was also a manager, was also going to be attending. So they basically people around the social justice movement will be attending. Not many engineers registered for this cause. Okay. Over to you, Prof. Torres Cruz.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hassan. Can you please confirm again, pardon, that you can see my slide in full screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so on behalf of myself and Professor Esvia Jacobs, I would like to start by thanking Hassan for reaching out to us, thanking CSOs for Tailings Justice for issuing or for giving us this opportunity to presenting what is a very technical document in a way that is more accessible to perhaps a non-engineering audience. So I would like to begin perhaps by explaining some of the names and logos that you see on this title slide. So first off is Professor Esvia Jacobs, who was the leader of this investigation. And together with me, so I'm Luis Torres Cruz, we co-authored this report, and we received significant support from Mr. Christopher O'Donovan, who was a master's student at the time and who helped us with the processing of the satellite images that we will be presenting. So as Hassan explained, Professor Jacobs is with the University of Pretoria. At the time when we were appointed to do this investigation, I was with the University of the Witwatersrand, and I am currently with UBC in Vancouver, Canada. And the report was commissioned by the Department of Water and Sanitation. So this is a rough outline of the presentation. We will start with the terms of reference and then move on to the locality of the TSF. We will discuss the failure event and then give you an overview of the history of this facility, which is based on satellite images. We will then discuss some observations from survey data. And after that, we will be closing with conclusions and recommendations. I will be presenting the first few slides before handing over to my colleague, Professor Esvia Jacobs. So I would like to begin by clarifying the terms of reference under which we conducted this investigation. So to be more specific, the report was commissioned by the Directorate on Dam Safety Regulation of the Department of Water and Sanitation. And they appointed, as I mentioned, the University of Pretoria and the University of the Witwatersrand to conduct this investigation. That appointment was concluded on the 27th of October of 2023. And our focus was to investigate the technical causes of the failure that had occurred on the 11th of September of 2022. So it is important here to emphasize that we were appointed to investigate the technical causes of the failure, and more specifically, the geotechnical causes of the failure. So why am I emphasizing this? As you all probably know, there are a number of physical mechanisms that can lead a tailing storage facility to fail. And I am showing only a few examples on this slide. So for example, we have issues related to slope instability or earthquake shaking or seepage of water through the dam, or a weak foundation layer can also lead to a failure. So that is one way of thinking about it when we ask ourselves, okay, why did such and such facility fail? One could say, oh, because of the earthquake, or because there was overtopping of the water, or because there was a weak foundation layer, and so on. However, it is important to realize that it is not the only way in which we can think about the causes of the failure. And here I would like to read a couple of excerpts to make this point more clear. Analysis of TSF failures often focus on the physical mechanisms of the failure. Understanding these aspects, these physical mechanisms, is essential, but it is insufficient for preventing the reoccurrence of TSF disasters. Human factors contribute substantially to bringing about failures and disasters. So what do we mean when we talk about human factors? Well, human factors involve decision-making processes as well as the organizational, regulatory, and industry context within which a TSF operates. For example, human factors could be difficulties for safety concerns to reach upper management, or remuneration incentives that favor short-term production over safety. Those are human factors, which I repeat, are very important to understanding why a TSF failed, but which were out of the scope of our investigation. We were focused entirely on the geotechnical aspects. And as Hassan also noted, the scope of our investigation also excluded environmental effects of the failure. A few qualifications about our investigation. We did not have detailed discussions with the employees of the mining company or with their consultants. This was not permitted to us for legal reasons. And therefore, some of our findings could not be tested. We would observe certain things in the satellite image, we draw a conclusion, but we have no way of confirming this with employees of the mining company or the consultants. So the investigation actually had two components. One was on the geotechnical aspects that we are going to be focusing on today. And as noted earlier, that was led by Professor Jacobs, with me being the second co-author. And the other one was a dam break analysis, which is also a technical type of investigation in which essentially you model, if there is a breach in the dam, where are the tailings going to flow? We were briefed by engineers from the Department of Water and Sanitation. Our first site visit took place in October 2023. We conducted an extensive desk study, which essentially refers to gathering all the documentation that you can possibly gather about a site without going to that site. And that desk study included the study of some reports, analysis of aerial and satellite images, and also of survey data, meaning the topography of the site. We conducted our own site investigation in January and March 2024, and also collected some samples of tailings for testing. I probably don't have to explain this to this audience, but maybe if you're not from South Africa, I will highlight the location of Jagersfontein. It is fairly close to what might be the geometric center of South Africa. And now we zoom in to the site and we see the TSF in the configuration in which it was, or at least in a similar configuration to the one it had at the time it failed. So this is the TSF. This is going to be the location that eventually failed. This is a water reservoir that is labeled as Dam 10. You can see the open pit over here. And around the site, you see many of these types of dumps, which are old tailings, which is in fact what the mining company was busy processing at the time of failure. You can also see the proximity of communities to the TSF. Just roughly, this TSF measures 2 kilometers in this direction and 1 kilometer in the north-south direction. Let's walk through the history of the Jagersfontein tailings dam. I will first touch on the history of the ownership, and then I will show you some aerial imagery to highlight a few aspects that are relevant to the failure, and then I will be handing over to Prof. Jacobs. So mining at this site, and again, to those of you who may not be from South Africa, this was a diamond mine. So mining at the site actually began in the 19th century, back in the 1870s. But in 1931, the Beers Group acquired the mine, and it operated it until approximately 1971. And at that point, mining stopped because the ore body had been depleted. And so from 1971 all the way to 2010, pretty much nothing happened at the site because the mine had been closed. But in 2010, the mine was sold to the Supercolong Consortium. In 2011, the Supercolong merged with Reinet Investments and formed Jagersfontein Developments, which is the current owner. In April 2022, a few months before the failure, Reinet Investments sold their shares to Star Gems of Dubai. And it is important to emphasize here that after 2010, when operations at the mine got restarted, all those operations did not involve further underground extraction of the ore, but rather involved the reprocessing of the legacy mine waste that was already on the surface, like the one that I showed, pardon me, over here, reprocessing of this mine waste to extract further diamonds. Here we see an image of what the site looked like shortly after the failure. Here's the tailings dam. This is the area of the breach, and the tailings flowed approximately 7 kilometers over land until they reached the process plate. And now if we zoom out again, this is the TSF over here. This is this 7-kilometer flow over land until it reached the process plate, and then it flowed an additional 56 kilometers until it reached the reservoir of the Kalkfontein Dam. So a brief overview of the failure event. This happened at approximately 6 a.m. on Sunday, September 11 of 2022. The southern wall breached at 2 locations, and piping and seepage occurred at a third location. Approximately 6 million cubic meters of water and tailings were discharged. 3 people lost their lives, including 1 person that was never found, and nearly 170 houses were severely damaged or destroyed. There was significant environmental impact, and as I pointed out in the previous slide, the tailings reached the reservoir of the Kalkfontein Dam, which is approximately 60 kilometers downstream from the site. We move on now to the analysis of aerial and satellite imagery, which played a very important role in our investigation. So when we refer to aerial imagery, this means to pictures that were taken from an airplane as opposed to from a satellite. So let's start with those aerial images. Those images were sourced from the Chief Directorate of National Geospatial Information of South Africa, which actually has a very comprehensive database of aerial images for different parts of the country, including Jagersfontein. So here we have some of those images, and you can see that they date back to 1944, and then we have another one, 1948, 1955, 1962, and 1973. And what I want to highlight here is that already in 1944, there was a TSF in place. It looked very different from what it looked like when it failed, but it was there in place. And you can see that there is these dumps of mine waste around it. And importantly, these dumps of mine waste continue to be present all the way to 1973, which is 2 years after the mine had closed due to ore depletion. So I'm going to zoom in now into this figure from 1944 so that you can appreciate those dumps of legacy mine waste more clearly. Now, having brought your attention to these dumps of legacy mine waste, and they do play a role in our explanation of the failure, which is why I am highlighting them to you. Now, Professor Jacobs will proceed to guide you through the analysis of the satellite images. This table summarizes all the high resolution satellite images that we use. And I just want to point out that we try to be very comprehensive in the satellite images that we used. We used publicly and freely available satellite images, but we also asked multiple suppliers of satellite images whether they had images of the site, and we purchased every image that we could get our hands on. And with that, I will stop sharing and switch over to Professor Jacobs. Did I stop sharing now?
I think so. Can I
Okay.
just confirm
Yes.
whether everyone can see my screen?
Yes,
It's loading. Yeah, we can see it now. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much to the CSO Tailings Working Group for the opportunity to present this work to you. So I am going to now go through satellite images that Professor Luis referred to, and we use these to figure out the sequence of events that occurred preceding the failure. So Professor Luis just showed us an aerial photograph from 1944, and he also showed us satellite aerial photograph from 1973, and we saw that not very much changed in terms of the presence of those dumps on the mine during that time. And what I'm doing now is I'm going to show you the first satellite image that we purchased, and that is from 2010. And in that image, you can, I just want to ask, can you see the mouse when I move with the mouse on my screen?
Yes, we can, Esvia. Thank you.
You can. So the dumps that Professor Luis referred to, you can see I'm pointing out one immediately to the south of the old De Beers Tailings Dam. And then another one that we saw was where I'm indicating now, and the third dump was indicated here. So important elements that I want to point out is this dam, basically the old De Beers Dam, looked the same in 2010 as what it did in 1973. So not much different. So we are then going to move on to the next tailings dam, the next photo of the tailings dam, and this is at the end of 2010, and you can see that construction commenced on a western compartment of the dam. So they cleared the site, started with the construction of the walls, and I sort of show the outline of the dumps again. The dump to the south of the De Beers Tailings Dam was known as Dump 10. So I labeled this as Dump 10. So that is also how they refer to it on the mine. Moving on to another photo, this is now 2 years later. You can see that the walls of the western compartment have been completed, and the mine had started to deposit tailings in this facility. So you can see that the trees are being submerged. Then we move on to 2012, end of 2012, another photo. You can just see more deposition in the compartment that was newly constructed. And you can also see the deposition point where I'm pointing with the mouse. You can see this sort of circular, semicircular area from which tailings started to fan out as it is deposited on the mine. So this was the only deposition point on the tailings dam, and all tailings always got deposited from the single point. Moving on to our next photo. What's happening in this case is that you can see that the Jagersfontein development started to reclaim the old dumps to the east of the original De Beers Dam. So you can see some of the material that's been removed here. And sorry, I just want to move this toolbar out of my way. So you can see they are busy removing material, and a conveyor belt had been put in place along the southern wall of the old dam to take the material reclaimed to the plant. So you can also see that compartment, the new compartment in the west, had been substantially filled already. Moving on to another photo, this is now end of August 2015. You can see the conveyor belt in place. You can see that removal of material of this dump and the dump to the north here have been progressing steadily. They've also started to remove some material from the southern wall of the old De Beers Dam. Then this is moving to 2016, so approximately 6 months after the photo that I just showed previously. Again, you can now see that the construction had commenced on an eastern compartment as well. So where the old dumps were removed, the walls were extended, and a new embankment was built, and a new compartment was being commissioned. And you can see that some slimes or tailings had already been deposited in part of this facility. Important to note that the conveyor belt is still in place, and that most of the material that comprised dump 10 has not been removed. That material is still largely there. Then moving on to 2017, what happened in this stage is you can see that deposition had advanced very significantly in the dam, in the eastern compartment. The eastern compartment was now beginning to submerge the old De Beers Dam. You can also see a new dam wall had been constructed to replace to form a containment around the old De Beers Dam. So the old De Beers Dam fell within this newly constructed dam. So this wall that I'm pointing out here, this is the area where the wall failed. It's very important to note that this was constructed from 2015 onwards. It is a new wall that failed, relatively new. Nothing to do with the old De Beers Dam. So what failed was new. An important feature in this particular photo is that you can see an access road running along the southern wall of the dam, and the access road here is fairly straight and it goes on to the dam with a ramp. And to move to our next photo, this is now 2 years after the previous one. You can see that the dam had grown substantially. The old De Beers Dam had been buried, and you can see that compartment one, the western compartment had also received quite a lot of tailings, but the new eastern compartment now completely submerged the old De Beers Dam. I want to point at the access road running along the southern wall of the dam. Important to note that this is a straight road. So this is a straight road. This is February of 2019. Then this is a satellite image taken 6 weeks after the previous, dated 2019, the 22nd of March. So 6 weeks after the previous one. And it was a slightly overcast day, but there is a feature that I'm pointing out here that points to instability of this wall. I'm going to go one photo back. This is what the photo looked like 6 weeks earlier. And there seems to have been quite a bit of movement in this part of the wall. I will show you some images later which will show this movement more clearly. You can also see that between the two photos, this is again February, the dam was empty. Rain occurred from the middle of February and it filled the dam. Dam completely filled. And I'm now going to go to the next photo, which is 2 months later. So this is the May 2019 photo. And if I play between these two photos, you can see some movement at the toe where I'm pointing with a mouse. You can also see that a lot of work had been done on the mine. There's also some signs of distress along the southeastern corner of the wall. So this is May of 2019. So if I go back to the previous photo, there seems to have been some movement taking place if you look at where I'm pointing with the mouse. Now I'm going to move on to another photo. And this is now from September of 2019. And if I go back a few photos and play through these photos, you can clearly see the deformation taking place here. So this feature in the dam, I think it is some aquatic vegetation, is being buried by this advancing slope here. So let's go on to another photo. This is now early in 2020. There was a circular feature constructed in the dam due to a bulldozer that got caught up in the dam. It fell into the dam and they rescued it. We had to really scratch our heads as to the reason for that, but it turns out that it was to rescue a bulldozer or retrieve a bulldozer. I just want to go to the next photo. So this feature has nothing to do with the failure on the dam. What you can see now is this is now 6 months later again, so July of 2020. And by this time, the circular feature had been covered, largely due to the deposition of more tailings in the dam. And you can also see that the partition wall between the two compartments is beginning to be submerged, so that we were busy forming one big compartment on the dam. I'm going to just go back a few photos, and I want you to look at the alignment of the road. The access road along the southern part of the dam was a straight road. When we go through the photos, you can see that this is now not a straight road at all anymore. It is curving very substantially to the south. So if I play through the sequence of photos, you can get a feel for the magnitude of movement which is busy taking place here. Then I'm going to look at another photo. This is now a month later, and say another couple of months later. And the point is this: we see this continuous movement taking place along the southern wall. If you look anywhere else in the dam, we just see the normal raising of the dam, and you don't see movement, outward movement, except opposite this water dam. This water dam, by the way, is known as Dam 10. So locally it was referred to as Dam 10. So what we are showing you in this photo is going back to February of 2019. In late February 2019, after it started raining and the dam filled, movement started to occur. This is 3.5 years before the dam failed, and these movements were progressively advancing and developing, getting larger and larger until the failure. So this is now in May of 2022. We've got one last photo that we were able to purchase from July of 2022. And in the next photo, you can see this is the failure. This was taken by satellites the day after the failure event. But what we have seen is a very large amount of movement in the southern wall of this dam leading up to failure. So we have now examined the sequence of satellite images that show to us that there was a lot of movement taking place in this dam as far back as 3.5 years prior to failure. So what I want to show you now is this a completely separate or different and independent source of satellite images. This is so-called PlanetScope satellite images. It's a different satellite image producer or provider, and they provide low resolution or lower resolution images. And I'm just going to, I want you to keep an eye on this area where I'm pointing. This is where the dam failed. And the date you can see on your right-hand side. And I'm going to advance these photos forwards and backwards a couple of times. And that will hopefully illustrate to you the deformation taking place along the southern wall. So you can see this is around the date when that high resolution satellite image was taken, movement taking place in this area, and you can see construction busy reinstating the road over that, reinstating the crest of the wall. There you can see construction taking place in that area. But if I move through these images fast, you can see that toe advancing outwards over time. I think it's maybe not perfectly clear due to the connection speed that we've got, but I hope you get the appreciation of the movement that took place in this area during the months of February and March of 2019. So a lot of deformation taking place in that area at the time. So this is from a completely separate satellite image. This is another satellite image. So this was PlanetScope. Looking at the before photo, so this was taken on the 8th of September. The failure was on the 11th of September. And if we look at the photo on the 12th of September, then you see this, the breach had occurred. And when I play between these photos, you see that this block along the southern wall where the dam failed displaced outwards by a large distance. We do not see these outward displacements anywhere else on the dam, but it seems that this wall slipped on something underneath and it moved to the south, and that resulted in these failure zones developing. So a large amount of deformation took place. So we were interested to figure out why was it possible for this dam wall to slip outwards on its foundation, as we are seeing in these photos. So this is a report that was written before the dam was built, just to illustrate in concept how they anticipated enlarging the old De Beers Dam. And the wall that failed is the one shaded in this pinkish color. And you can see the southern part where the failure occurred is where this wall was constructed over the old dump, which is called Dump 10, that I referred previously. So in this area where I'm pointing out the eastern parts, these dumps which covered the ground here had been largely removed. But Dump 10 had never been removed, and construction of the dam wall occurred over this material. I just want to show you a sequence of images or just to illustrate to you how the dam was built. So this red wall or pinkish wall was built like that shown there. So we call it the starter wall, and then that provided some containment, and it is made from a material which is called grit. So nice coarse grained material that they got from the tailings dumps that Professor Luis showed earlier. So they built this from the coarse grained material. It's a very good material, nothing wrong with it, and it is good for dam building. What they did then is this provided containment or confinement so that they could deposit the fine slimes inside this dam. Once the slime level had reached a certain height, they had to raise the dam. So they used grits again, this nice material, and built the dam higher. And part of raising, you can see, would have involved constructing over this fairly soft tailings. So if I use my pen here, the material there would have been soft, waterlogged, wet tailings. So when you raise a dam like this, you had to build this wall over that material. So this provided a higher wall now, and it could take more material. So over time, they raised it with slimes like that. And then the process was repeated. So again, they had to raise the outer wall. Construction occurred over this wet material, and they then raised the slimes level in the dam further. So that is how the dam was physically built over time.
Sorry, Prof. Sorry,
yes.
Prof. Just a question from me.
Certainly.
So they built on top, but what about the foundation? Was it strong enough at the time?
I can say in hindsight now, it was not strong enough in this particular place. So, and the reason for that is because I built it on this old dump. This old dump had material that had a very low strength. And for some reason, that material was not removed when they built the wall where I labeled grits initially. So that the problem why this thing failed is because it was built on that material. That is our conclusion. You don't see movement in the dam wall anywhere else where this fine material from dump 10 was not present. And our conclusion is that this material had a very low strength. There is evidence of that low strength from our own testing and testing by others as well. So that so a bit of a preview is why the dam actually failed, because this part of the wall was built over dump 10 without removing the material that formed dump 10. What I want to do is just to highlight a number of as constructed details, certain details of this dam. Tailings was only delivered from a single point in the west. So usually so this is a picture of the dam, and the delivery point is where the arrow points. Usually we have a ring pipe that goes around the dam so that we can develop or deposit tailings anywhere. In this case, there was only a single point. There was also no decant system on the mine. Usually near the middle of your tailings dam, you have a pipe, and excess water will flow into that pipe, and that is how we remove excess water from a dam. In this case, there was no such facility, so water had to leave the dam by means of evaporation, or it had to leave it by means of seepage. So you can get seepage and you can get evaporation, but there was no other way to remove water from the dam. It is also important to note that a large volume of water and slurry, so fine slimes, were stored on the dam at all times because it was not possible to remove that material, so it was stored on the dam. The embankment was therefore raised over wet material of fairly low strength. So when part of the embankment was raised, you would have had to construct over these fine-grained, weak materials. So that would have been slimes over which you had to build your raised sections of embankment. So that is a couple of aspects that I feel is important for us to appreciate. What I want to show you is a couple of additional satellite images that show additional movement, more than what I've shown you up to now. So there's been evidence of movements along the southern wall of this dam for 3.5 years prior to failure. And I want to show you the movement of the access road. There's a tree that moved. We call it the wandering tree. And then there are cracks in the tailings dam that we could see even on Google Earth images that anyone could access. So first of all, let's just look at, this is now that March of 2019 photo on the overcast day. And what I'm drawing is the right-hand or the southern edge of the access road. And let's look at this red line. So this is, there's also a rock, or we think it is a shrub that you can't really see it here. You can see there's a slightly darker patch in the satellite photo, but it's much clearer in the next photo. And we track the movement of that patch. So if you move on to the next photo, this is the new road alignment, and the patch had now moved by 12 meters. Looking at our next photo, the patch had now moved another 15 meters. The road alignment very, very significantly not straight anymore. It used to be a straight road. Looking at a photo sometime later, you can see another 21 meters in that shrub. And then it moved 14 meters more, 7 meters more, and then the failure occurred. So this shrub moved from the position over there all the way here over a distance of 87 meters over the course of 3.5 years. That's a movement of about nearly 10 centimeters per day on average, maybe between 80 and 100 millimeters. So it's about this much movement per day. So you can see the road alignment is now very far from a straight road which ran along the southern wall of the road, the southern wall of the dam. And there was evidence of movement of features located to the south of the dam by great distance. There's another disconcerting feature, and this is this tree, which I circled with this yellow line. So you can see, not very clear to see it on this overcast day. The photo was taken under overcast conditions. The next day it is better, but there you can, the next photo shows it better. There's the tree, and this tree then started to move. There is the same tree. You can also see there's the evidence of deformation in this area where I'm pointing. And then the tree moved, and it was beginning to walk past its neighbor. You can see it was standing here originally, and it moved over the course of the 3 years prior to failure by approximately 28 meters. The fact that that tree remained green tells us that it must have moved with its root system intact, which tells us that this deep-seated movement is not only superficial movement. So, yeah, a very, very substantial evidence of movements along the toe of the dam prior to the failure event. What I want to also show you then is evidence of cracks. This is a Google Earth image taken in September of 2020, 2 years before the failure event. If you look at this area where I'm pointing with the mouse, you can see a faint feature which looks like a crack. The resolution of this image is 30 centimeters, which means that the smallest feature that a pixel can identify is about 30 centimeters. So the fact that we can see this crack on a satellite image tells us that it must have been substantial. Then if you look at the eastern part, near the corner of the dam, southeastern corner, there's also more evidence of distress with crack-like features that I'm pointing out. If we zoom into the first one that I showed, we can see better that the crack existed, and then I can show you the other one as well. There's some evidence of the crack. And if we superimpose these cracks, the locations with respect to where the dam failed, you can see that there's close correspondence between the breach zone. So this is the one indicated with the yellow dotted line, and the original crack, or the one crack, and then what we call breach 3 and the other crack. So there's good correspondence between those pre-existing cracks and where the dam ultimately failed. So what we saw on this dam, to summarize, is movement commenced in 2019, February of 2019, as the dam was gaining height. We saw an average movement from February of about 2.5 meters per month, so 2.5 meters in a month, until February of 2021. So that was over a period of 2 years. It moved by roughly 2.5 meters per month. And then it slowed down a bit until failure. So from February 2021, it moved about 0.8 meters per month until July of the year of the failure, which is the last photo that we had. Then the failure occurred, and during the failure on the 11th of September, a large part of the wall moved a large distance, about 15 meters to the south. So that is what physically happened during the failure event. Then we also investigated survey data. So the mine surveyed the tailings dam every now and again, and we could look at the geometry of the dam from the survey data and see how it changes over time. So important question that we had to ask is, did this dam overtop? So did they store so much water that the dam overtopped? So what we are looking at here is a picture of the dam, and the yellow line that I'm highlighting there indicates a cross-section through the dam at the position of that yellow line. So I'm indicating a cross-section here at the yellow line. So you can see the pool inside is this big, large, flat area. And the southern wall was 3 meters higher than the pool, and the northern wall 6 meters higher. If we look at the geometry on the yellow line on the right-hand side here, you can see 6 meter high wall, 4 meter high wall. And then if you look at the line drawn from east to west through the dam, the walls were 4 meters and over 4 meters high. So this dam did not fail because it overtopped under normal conditions, because the dam walls were quite a lot higher than the slimes level in the dam. So it was not a mere overtopping issue. Then I'm not going to show a lot of survey data. I just want to show two survey cross sections. So this is a cross section through the dam at the place where it failed. So this is the red line shows the July 2021 geometry. And then the other profile, the blue one, shows the situation a couple of months later. So let's say 9 months later, roughly. So it's in April of 2022. So red line is 2021, blue line is 2022. And we were interested to understand in the movement that was taking place. So what we did is we drew a line on the ground level, which is the black line, onto which the dam was built. So if we draw that red line and you offset that red line, you move it upwards to the toe of the dam. So this feature where I'm pointing here is the access road on the south of the dam. This is from the July 2021 photo. And where I'm pointing now is the same access road, but in April of 2022. So the access road had moved from this position here to this position. Sorry, I'm not drawing so well. The road moved to this position here from this position here. And you can see that the fact that the line that I drew here still cuts through the road. It seems that the whole situation is the sliding in the direction of these arrows. So the whole dam seems to have been sliding like that. And if I then go on to another and move this line through the crest, you see the crest was there and the crest is now over there. So it seems that everything was sliding down this flat slope. So that is also the survey data confirming the very large movements that we identified from the satellite images. So we learned about the movement both from the survey data and from satellite images. Then the failure event itself. I just want to talk through the sequence of events that happened. This happened on the 11th of September, early in the morning, 2022. So there were some eyewitnesses who reported activity on the dam the night before the failure. But I need to point out that the operation of the dam was 24-hour activity, and that it was not unusual for activity to be taking place on the dam during the night because it operated on a 24-hour basis. So we have eyewitness information to tell us that the crest of the dam wall failed on the southern wall where the dam broke towards the inside of the dam at about 6 o'clock in the morning. I will demonstrate that with this picture. So there were people on the dam at the time of failure, and they observed this failure occurring to the inside, and how it failed is more or less as I'm showing there. So we got the slip failure to the inside on the morning at 6 o'clock. And the shock associated with this movement that took place there then caused this dam, which has already been sliding for a long time, to start sliding again. And what I'm trying to demonstrate here is how we understand this sliding to have taken place. So we first got this failure taking place to the inside. The shock with that then disturbed the balance in this dam, and it started to slump like this. So it slumped, the crest lowered because of this movement, And that caused the crest level to go lower than the water level in the dam. And then the water started to flow out, and we started to get erosion of the walls as this water flowed out. So the walls that stood here originally was now being eaten away by the material flowing out of the dam, and it eroded it away. So let's just look through the sequence again. So we understand that the failure occurred to the inside. It is reported by eyewitnesses. The shock associated with that caused the sliding to start again on the foundation here, where it has been sliding for 3.5 years. And this sliding caused the crest to slump, lowering below the water level. Overtopping occurred, and as overtopping occurred, it washed away the walls at the locations where the breach occurred, and the dam broke, and 5.9 million cubic meters of tailings flowed out. So following this failure, the crest, we know that the crest slumped by approximately 8 meters. We can figure that out by looking at the parts of the wall which are still intact. So we could survey that and find the amount of slumping, and we could also survey the amount of outward movement, and found that about 15 meters of outward movement took place as the dam slipped on dump 10, the material that was in dump 10. So overtopping then occurred due to that slumping at locations 1 and 2. And at location 1, we were told by eyewitness accounts that material from the sites fell into the breach, and that stopped the failure from progressing further in this area. But the failure then focused in the area at location 2, and that is where the main failure occurred. So material washed out there, all 6 million cubic meters that flowed out of there. Most of it flowed out at location 2. Location 3 was just where the wall slipped, and there was a little bit of erosion taking place, but not sufficient to break the dam, basically, in that area there. I've mentioned the volume of the material that flowed out. And then, the scar 3 is where some piping occurred. We don't need to dwell on that. Interesting to note that the partition wall between the old compartment 1, the western compartment, and the newly formed compartment 2, that partition wall remained intact, and we are very grateful for that, because it means that the material from this essentially did not flow out and took part in the failure. So at least that partition wall stopped material from the western compartment to also fail and flow out. I just want to show you a model. So here at the university, we have machines that allows us to test models of failures like this. So when you look at a slope like this, and this gets to failure, a failure takes place like that. So you can see that this material is slipping on that roughly orangey material there. And then if you allow overtopping there, you can see overtopping as water starts to flow from the right-hand side. In our model, we didn't have a lot of material, but that amount of overflow in Jagersfontein was a lot. There was a lot of material behind the wall that could flow out, and that washed away the entire dam wall and caused the failure to take place in the way that it did. Okay, we are about at conclusions. So we concluded that the first signs of instability on this dam was identifiable from satellite images in February 2019. There was then near constant movement between the coarse material which formed the walls, the so-called grits, and the underlying fine tailings in the southern wall of the dam, in the area overlying dump 10. Then, as the movement continued, Jagersfontein developments, we said here, presumably attempted to compensate for the movement by placing more material. So they continuously raised the dam in the area where the movement took place, we think, to compensate for the movement that was constantly taking place. All the while, the dam was raised further and more tailings was deposited inside the dam. The inner slope of the dam then failed to the inside on the morning of 11 September. We have eyewitness accounts to confirm that. This triggered the final failure, so the shock associated with that internal failure provided just that shock to remobilize the sliding on the dump 10 material. And a large amount of slip occurred, accompanied by slumping of the crest. That slumping of the crest went under the water level in the dam, and that resulted in the dam overtopping at the failure zone. And that is how the dam then failed. So our recommendations is that we were on site more than a year after the dam failed. It is urgent to investigate failures like this immediately after the failure event, not a year afterwards. So there are various reasons why this happened so late. One of them is because of the cost. The Department of Water and Sanitation went to the engineering fraternity and asked companies to tender to do this, and it just came back at very high cost, and therefore they approached our two universities, and our universities conducted this as a research project at a very much reduced cost. So the value of optical satellite imagery, I think, was nicely illustrated here. You must remember that there's an eye in the sky watching all the time. Nothing can be hidden. There are satellites watching literally every day what is happening. We recommend that dam wall performance need to be monitored carefully. You need to monitor for movement, and you need to monitor for the water pressure in the dam. Those did not happen as far as we could understand in this particular dam. Then I showed you the water dam immediately to the south of the tailings dam. You can have a water dam next to a tailings dam, but you need to carefully design for that. It is not ideal to have a water dam on the toe of a tailings dam. You can have it if it is well designed, but it is a risk, in my opinion. It is important to ensure that dams like this is properly and thoroughly documented with the authorities. When we went to the Department of Water and Sanitation, we could not source from them the water use license application for this dam, which raises serious questions. Then there are many case histories in the literature where people talk about lessons learned from tailings dam failures, and the fact that this failure occurred, tells us that the lessons are not being learned, have not been learned, and this again occurred. So this is the only recommendations that I want to list at this point. If you are interested in our technical report, you can scan that QR code, or you can find the report on the website of our client, the Department of Water and Sanitation, and read the whole long story there. Yeah, that is my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. We would be very pleased to answer questions if you have questions.
Thank you, Professor Jacobs. Thank you, Professor Torres Cruz. I'm going to open it up to the floor. From your story, and I try to look at it as if I didn't read the report, it does look like a disaster is long time in the making. It doesn't just happen, right? And then the question there is, which I don't think your report necessarily touches on or was mandated to touch on, is where is the monitoring for this regular? Because I've seen some of the best practices. I was looking at someone doing Mount Poly, I think Professor Wang, talking about annual simulations involving communities or nearby to try and check that out. So my one question is about that, about this is a long time in coming. And what is the role of the engineer of record? Because if you guys could identify this movement having taken place retrospectively, you could see it backwards. Where was the engineer of record at the time monitoring this? And just to say, I saw Mark Cater writing there. Mark, these were wet tailings, not the dry ones. The dry ones have different kind of problems. So I don't know, Professor Torres, whether you guys want to take a few questions, because I see Richard from London Mining Network is here with us. He would like to ask a question. Could I take 2 or 3 questions and then see how we take it?
Certainly.
Cool. Richard? Harkinson.
Sorry, yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that very fulsome, that very clear review. of failures at Fontaine. Clearly, though, you weren't allowed to talk to consultants and contractors and lowly workers. There are some indications of blame, given that there were signs of failure from 2019 onwards to 2022. Sorry, I'm at the moment we're looking at what Rio Tinto does in the Mongolian desert on the northern edge. That's where Mongolia borders with China. They've got, I think there's all these euphemisms about a paddock type, a kilometer by kilometer square. They wanted the regulatory body wanted aligning to this. They refused and said they were compacting the clay. They didn't compact. So we've got. I think that we've got the fastest seepage on record, but and they are on a second of these that they hasten to do. I would welcome you putting up the QR code again for the report at I think it's at DWS, isn't it? That site,
Yeah.
And so we can pass on this information as quickly as possible. And and Hassan, you've got me. I did. There are so many questions about there's a relationship between the Global Mining Institute, I think it's called, that's now located in South Africa. And then we're trying to find out from 2020 with Brumadinho in Brazil, that failure, very violent and catastrophic failure, and the previous failure there. We're just trying to find out what exactly the industry is now doing in conjunction with those investors who are concerned about the management of tailings and the role of UNEP. And we think that there's, in terms of a portal of information on tailings dams, we think that there should be some pressure there. But sorry, thanks. I'll get off and say thank you again, and we welcome you putting the QR code on, and we'll look for the links that you referred to. I mean, Lewis, you mentioned some links with of work in 2024. So yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Prof. Jacobs, maybe you guys can start at least to answer what you can. The other stuff about the Tailing Management Institute and that we can talk about it because we are monitoring that. Yeah.
Hassan, what we can say about the EOR is it was not our impression that there was an EOR. So we would have liked to pose similar
engineer
questions
of record,
engineer of record. Yeah, engineer of record. We would obviously have liked to have posed those questions to the owner of the dam, but it is not clear to us that there was an EOR responsible for this dam. There's certainly not someone of the qualifications that you would expect to be in charge of a facility like that. So and because of legal reasons, we could not interrogate them to follow up on this. But so certainly something that will come out in the court case.
Also, Hassan, you commented on how this appears to have been an accident that was long time in the making. And that is true for Jagersfontein. And from the case histories that I have reviewed, it is true for most of them. So this is true for Brumadinho, true for Fundão, true for Mount Poly, you name it. So yes, these events are often described as sudden and rapid, and they are, yes, but the buildup to that sudden failure is generally years long.
I agree.
Just to point out that the mine is operational again, Anga. So that is something that you must bear in mind. It hasn't been closed; it's been reopened. You guys in your concluding recommendation, you both refer to other mines, and you concur. It's quite lovely. Before your signatures, you say, in the case of Edenville Dam, Michigan, USA, 2022, France, 2022, made the following statement. With respect to the human judgments, decisions, actions, and inactions during the project history leading up to May 2022 event, the dam failures were foreseeable and preventable. In the opinion of the investigating panel, this statement is equally valid for Jagersfontein tailings dam failure. So given the ample warnings of instability, the Fernsteins 3.5 years ago, this is something that the Deputy Minister and others quoted. But then you make another judgment, and I understand that you guys are being very cautious, but I think it's quite damning, where you make the judgment that they came to you so late when the conditions there to study had fundamentally changed. And, given that, part of our leftist orientation, that I really do not think that a government should be going around shopping to find out what happened that resulted in the death of 5 people. One of them was presumed missing, but now dead, or presumed dead because they went missing. The government shouldn't be going on a shopping list to who can do this. Isn't there an infrastructure? I don't want you to venture out of your comfort zone, but I really want you to. I think for me, this is quite damning what you guys found.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable to comment on that, and I can only agree with you, Hassan. When something like this happened, the investigation needs to be commissioned immediately, and there was an instruction given to start with an investigation. They asked the owner to start with an investigation, and then they asked them to stop because they were scared of conflict of interest. Impairing the judgment of the people doing the investigation. But there's an easy way around that, because all that you do is you submit that report to peer review. So you must get the client to investigate, you must get his best consultants to start investigating immediately. And if you are scared that they will be biased, you subject that report to peer review, which can easily be done. So I think we've learned from, or the authorities have learned from this. But we must not wait a year before you get an investigator on site. Certainly not.
Prof. Torres,
just to add a bit of context here, this year-long delay between the failure and the beginning of the investigation, there's nothing similar to that when you look at failures in other mining jurisdictions. The Cadia failure in Australia, Fundão and Brumadinho in Brazil, or Mount Poly in Canada, the lag in time between the failure and the beginning of the investigation, you're looking at weeks or maximum a couple of months, but not a year.
It was exactly like that for Mary Spruit. The investigators were on site quickly after the failure.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah. So the authorities, I'm comfortable to say, must step in here, clean up the act.
I want to just thank you. I want to see if there's anyone else before I put one more question to you, and then we can decide to close. Any question? Henk, je het laat gekomen, but you're here. Anyone else?
Sorry, I wrote something in the chat, but it's been answered. It's just astonishing that everything went wrong. The WULA is missing. The engineer can't report, and the reports are not on file. The annual assessments by environmental assessments, also supposedly by independent experts, did not recognize and alert us. And that the industry itself, in a system of self-regulation, is too expensive, cannot produce an investigation, and that university research monies must be used, must be resorted to come to the bottom of this disaster. It is outrageous.
Yeah, so at least what I can say is we did not use university research money for this. The investigation was paid for by the Department of Water and Sanitation. But obviously we did it at a rate much lower than what consultants would do it, because my salary, Dr. Louise's salary was paid anyway. So we could do it at a competitive rate. But yeah, I've share your sentiments.
And we're grateful for you guys are doing it for the public service. Yeah. Listen, I mean, if you look at common reasons for failure, I think we're talking a lot about this, I think liquefaction and seepage, this one part of it. But the other one seemed to be the impacts of climate change and rainfall and that. I mean, I remember Zululand anthracite colliery, I think it was before Christmas Eve or something, massive rains again. And I haven't. I mean, I'm a generalist. I'm not a specialist in trying to get better on this. But do you find that often the pressures of rain exacerbate or make these bursts because they were poorly constructed? There's a number of factors, not one. But does the impact of climate change really impact on it? And I don't see you guys touch much on that. You touch on rainfall a lot. But climate change in it.
I can just tell you that this dam did not fail because of climate change.
Yeah.
So that is, Luis, I don't know if you want to add.
Yeah, I mean, I concur. One of the key parameters that designers of TSFs have to consider is, for example, the maximum credible rainfall. Right? What's the maximum credible storm? Yet, if we look at least at the last 20 years, we struggle to find a case history where the failure was brought about because the maximum credible rainfall was exceeded. In fact, I cannot think of one, not of a single one right now. But I mean, Brumadinho was not a rainfall, Mount Polly, Cadia, what maybe comes closest to have been triggered by excessive rainfall is Maritzburg, but even there we would be, I think of the rainfall more as a contributing factor rather than the main reason why Maritzburg failed. If it had been properly operated, then Maritzburg would have not failed. So I am not trying to say that climate change does not have to be a consideration when we're looking into the design of TSFs. Yes, it has to be a consideration, but what the record of case histories tells us so far is that it is not yet a significant cause for the failures that we are seeing.
Agreed.
So while we're having a nice consensus there, could I say about the extremities of heat and cold? I mean, I went to Free State and that is I mean, if the guys who maintain our roads say that is one of the problems about maintenance of roads in many parts of South Africa. So I'm saying to you not to see climate change only in aspects of rain, but to see it in terms of other aspects. Of course, all things being equal, if it's poor design, and that fundamentally would become the issue for when it bursts or not, no? I'm just asking.
Yeah, so poor design or possibly absence of design. So we would have loved to see the record of decision and things on which the water use license application would have been based. So one of those things would have been a geotechnical investigation report. When you build something like this, you should do a geotechnical investigation and characterize the material on the footprint of your dams. And that would be a key part of your design information that you need when you design the dam. And we could not find that because the water use license application was not available with authorities. So the design, we would like to look into the design and comment on it, but we could not find the design. So unfortunately, there's only conceptual reports, ideas, and not a detailed design available.
Yeah. So here's probably a final question then from our work. We've been trying to track the dam register, which was supposedly enthusiastically embraced after the disaster. But I think we found only about 22 odd companies out of 300 and some odd tailings holders, if you like, have registered. Right?
Do you mean people registered for the design of tailings dam?
The dam register, yeah.
Yeah,
no,
so this dam was
think
registered
Hasan means
with the Department of Water and Sanitation.
Yeah, this dam was registered 9 months before it failed with the Department of Water and Sanitation, or it was classified by the dam. I think I stand to be corrected, but I think it is 9 months before the failure. It was classified as a dam with a Category 3 risk.
Yeah,
there has been some a struggle to get the dam registered.
Yeah, so we picked up that the registration by corporations is very, very low. The question for me is that part of the problem for community activists is that they have to track this as part of dams as a whole and look at high risk, or they're categorized in terms of risk. Do you know of any examples where tailing dams are registered as tailing dams on their own? Because we would prefer separation of that, but registering them as part of dams, and then you find a risk and you've got to look, this is a tailing, makes it complicated for activists around mining communities.
Yeah, tailings dams is now required by the Department of Water and Sanitation that tailings dams be classified as dams with safety risks, which they certainly are. They certainly are dams with safety risks. But they've decided to. I'm not sure there will be a separate tailings dam register, but definitely all tailings dams must henceforth be classified as dams with safety risks, and they need to be registered with the Department of Water and Sanitation. So in the past, there was a gray area there. Tailings dams were often not viewed as dams with safety risks because they don't really store water. But the fact that they store material which can be mobilized and flow out, I think it makes sense to certainly have them classified as dams with safety risks.
Prof. Luis Torres, anything from your side?
Hasan, only to say that I agree with what you're saying. It makes perfect sense to have a separate register specifically for tailings dams, 100%.
Thank you very much. I think we have 5 minutes before closure, but this is a good time to close. Listen, guys, I think you are honorary working class and popular academics. We understood most of what you said. We were fearing that you guys taught in the shady art of engineering. No one would have understood you, but you've arrived, and thank you very much. And thank you for all the participants. And let's see whether we can do this again. I hope your report could be used to educate others. Yeah.
Sorry, I'll leave it to Ezvia to close the session. I just wanna before we do that, thank Hasan for the opportunity to present to this audience. thank Esvia for leading this effort. It has been great to work by his side, and I've also learned a great deal. And maybe if it hasn't been done so, Hasan, if you already have the link of the presentation that Prof. Jacobs delivered for SAISI, which has some similarities with this one, and gets a bit more technical, but you might find it beneficial to also have that link. So thank you very much, and over to Prof. Jacobs.
Before Prof comes in, before Prof. Jacobs come in, we have shared it already also on our website, and we've tried to go through, and it's the one that advised us that you guys should do what you did today. So it's a good addendum, and we're learning it. It's tailings literacy, so maybe you guys can tell us what kind of key concepts that we need to go through for communities, because the safety first guidelines that we adhere to is a principle that there's participation of communities from beginning to end, but it does mean a self-education is required, and we may call on you again. Prof. Jacobs, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the kind words. As university lecturers, we're always very conscious that what we say should be understandable by our students, and when we talk to people in the community like this, I am very happy that you feel that you could follow what we said. So we certainly try to do that, and I appreciate your word of thanks in that respect. Yeah, reaching out to communities, I think an important thing is when you live close to a tailings dam, you need to be aware of the safety. There need to be a safety plan. There's usually an evacuation plan and things, and it's really essential that this needs to be communicated with the community affected nearby, so that no one can be ignorant of what happens if suddenly we do get this unforeseen event and we now need to spring into action. So I think as activists, I would encourage you to make sure that if you are aware of facilities very close to people, there must be a plan. What do we do when things go wrong? And it needs to be communicated in the middle of the night under stormy conditions, because that's typically when these things could fail. And but these plans need to be in place. That is the least that we can do. And I think then obviously the rest, you need to have responsible engineers, competent engineers in charge of these facilities and overseeing their daily their operation, and be sure that they remain safe.
Yeah, one of the participants, Mungiseni, Prof. Sibiya, writes, "Thank you for the panelists for such a wonderful, insightful presentation. I learned a lot. So he liked the presentations, and I guess in a way we would say we'd like to make it available to them again. This will come through as a podcast, and your accompanying notes would help to break this down. And hopefully, in a workshop, we would be much better off if you talk to us in a few months. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity.
Gracias a todos.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, dankie, meneer.
Bye, dankie.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, comrades. Thank you, comrades.
Comrade professors, yeah?